God. Well, I mean, the first thing I think of when I think of text is, like an alphabetic text, right? Like a book. A text is more than something that is textual, right? Something beyond just like an alphabetic work.
I think texts are everything.
I think a text can be anything you want it to be, in that it's anything that you are thinking critically about and sort of engaging with.
Something that you can analyze that gives like a message, or like aligns itself with some kind of like philosophy or thought. As like a rhetorician, everything is discourse and everything is a text to study. So, and that's probably like what, after like the culmination of like my college experience, that's probably what my definition of it, like a text would be. People still make like a distinction between text and like visual, like there's visual objects, there's textual objects,
like cultural artifacts.
I mean, from our perspective, it's like more of like a theoretical thing, like, like we don't like limit ourselves to analyzing certain things and like not analyzing other things. So from that perspective, like with that purpose, everything is a text.
Music or film, videos, like events, even though it doesn't have like a physically tangible form. I think it's the moment of interaction. Because like I don't think that this is a text until someone wants to engage with it as a text. So I think it's the act of engaging with something as a text that produces the thing as text. I mean, I think it sort of depends on what you mean by like engage, right? Like how you're engaging with it. And I don't know what the answer to that is, like how one engages in something as a text versus other ways of engaging. But I don't know. I'm trying to think of things that wouldn't qualify as a text, and
I engaged with my shower this morning.
Right, but right, okay. So, but there's a type of engagement. I mean, is it how are you engaging with your shower this morning?
I got in it.
Right. Okay. But there wasn't an act of. I mean, I think it has to be like a critical engagement. Right? I don't think it just has to be like I think like from work to text. Right. Okay. Like if I'm just reading a book, right, I'm engaged with it. But if I'm just sort of reading it as sort of a pleasurable act or whatever, I think that's different than if I'm engaging with it critically.
Like I think Bart wrote about that, right? Mm-hmm. Like the difference between a text and a book. Was it text and a book? Work. Text and a work.
It sounded like you just proposed that in certain ways a book is not a text.
Right. I think so. I think a book could become a text in certain contexts. Not context, right? But I think that book, like the physical, like this thing right here, like just this object, isn't necessarily always a text. For me, I understand a text as something that relationship, right? That's something you interact with.
Don't talk to book history people.
I know. I'm sorry.
I just find it interesting because when
people
worry about text, usually it gets contentious about including things. But I've never heard of anyone like start excluding books. Like this book is not a text.
Well, I mean, I think any book could be a text. I think it's like a moment of becoming a text rather than sort of always already being a text. Then I think like this moment right here, me talking right now, could be
a textual event.
Like if someone, like you were saying, like you wanted to do like some weird like Derridian analysis of like this interaction right now, like right, like that would function, I think, as like a text. So like if Blake right now is analyzing this like being right here, it's different than like if you guys analyze this later, right? Like I think both things are text, but I think they're also a little different because there's that mediation than you have of the video versus being present in that moment.
Distance.
Right, exactly.
But I think that in English it has more resonance, or like it has a more abstract meaning maybe in English because of like how many like people have written about like theorized text. It's aligned with like a post-structuralist like tradition, I think. So
and also like I also use the word text sometimes just to mean like a book. But I think like if I'm thinking more critically about what like text in the abstract, I would say that yes, it's still a text. It's just the words themselves aren't a text. It's like the book, the physical book itself becomes a text. Well, I mean, I don't know if I've ever sat down and like asked my students, okay, like what is a text?
I never used the word text with my middle schoolers.
But we work with primary sources. They have to write about a primary source if they're choosing. And I sit down and I do explain like what I mean by a primary source, and I often call these things texts, right? Like what text you're working with.
I don't think they understood that what text is. It's not. It doesn't have to like necessarily be like a material object. It's mostly just like when I say like look at the text, like look at what we're analyzing, like what we're talking about.
And I actually probably confuse them because sometimes I say text to refer to like an article that we've read, and then sometimes I say text to mean like the music video that you're looking at. So actually, maybe we should sit down one day and like have a discussion with them about what I mean when I say text. But yeah, for me in the classroom, again, a text is sort of anything that they want to that they're engaging with critically. I mean, I think if like I asked them that on the first day, and maybe I will in the future, they would probably say like a book, you know, or like a play or whatever, or maybe like a text message, maybe, you know, like a text, right? Text for them, I think, is something probably associated with like literature. For them, my course is gender and pop culture, so often for them it's, you know, like a music video or lyrics to a song or an episode of a TV show are often the sort of texts that we work with in the classroom, I guess. And then also articles and alphabetic text that I bring in. Well, I do actually talk with them about like what literature is and what I mean when I say literature, right? Because a lot of what we look at are pop culture artifacts, right? I talk with them a lot about how, you know, we don't consider these things like music videos or TV or whatever to be valid objects of study, right? We don't consider them to be text in the same way that we consider like a Dickens book or a Shakespeare play to be texts. And so I engage with them in a very self-conscious way to get them to think about what sorts of things are worth looking at critically, and I mean, essentially, I think like the gist of what I say to them, even if it's not explicit, is that like everything is worth looking at critically, right? And that's why we should look at things that specifically are marked as frivolous, right? Things that are marked as not worthy of being looked at critically are even more important to look at critically, right? Because for some reason, culture, society, right, doesn't think that we should give them attention, and so we should give them attention. So yeah, I don't know. That's I think in a way it gives them more breadth, or hopefully like. And the goal with that is so that they start looking at like things in their own life critically, right? Specifically with pop culture, right? So they like will see a commercial, not just sort of passively consume it, right? But sort of be looking at things critically. And by things, I mean texts. What I have got is people who say like, oh wow, this is like, it's cool that we're looking. You know, I think part of it is like, oh wow, like I get to watch music videos for my class instead of like read boring. You know. But I think what's also happening there is that, like, yeah, they're saying, like, oh, it's cool. But I think also, hopefully, it actually has an effect on how they think about analysis and criticism. If we think of being critical as just something that one can do with alphabetic text, right, then I think that's really limiting. A broader definition of text helps facilitate, you know, broader ways of thinking and being critical and analytical. Class is where, like, serious analysis happens, right? Music videos aren't the subject for serious analysis. And so I think part of it is that sort of, I think it can be liberating in a way for them, you know, like, oh cool, we can look at this stuff.
Formerly in the class.
Yeah.
But, so I would never use that because I don't think, I was teaching remediation too, so they weren't like, they were already struggling with reading and language and math. So it was hard to use, you couldn't really use a term that had more abstract implications like text. I really think that like every field probably uses the word text in like different ways. Like, I mean, like if you, like in undergrad I took math classes, and I know, like I can recall times when my professor was like that's like that lesson is in the text. So it has like a practical use value, I think. Like it has like a more material use. Like this is a text, and like my hand is not a text. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in that, from that like perspective.
So here's a question.
Okay.
If the world as we know it ends, and there's no one left who understands English or is capable of decoding it, and there's a book, is
Written in
it
English.
a text then, or is it no longer?
So
a
is
text?
that? Are you
Because
asking me if a
cannot-
tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it? Does it swing us out?
That assumes that there's no such thing as archaeology, though. Right?
Right. Okay. So let me. Okay. So are you saying that Like,
think it's-
like
yeah,
I write a book.
assuming a lot.
Like
Yeah.
that I write a book,
also
and then
it's the end of the world.
everyone dies, and like some alien species discovers this book and doesn't understand it. Is it still a text?
Right.
Why?